Marc's trying to talk about inappropriate things, and I said no. Can you see us okay?
Can you see my hair?
I've made a deliberate effort, actually, to wear a different color. Did I talk about this last time? To wear a different color shirt? Because, like, 3 episodes in a row, I was wearing, like, the same shirt. Not even the same color, the same exact one. And so when I was trying to go through and, like, oh, title this one, I was like, which podcast was this?
It's funny you say that because as soon as you went live, I looked at myself on there and I said in my head, oh, and I cursed in my head. I said, darn it, I'm wearing a gray shirt, and gray really shows off my barrel of a stomach that I'm rocking right now. So.
Oh, I thought you were going to make mention of your sweaty armpits that are coming very soon.
That too. Both of them.
Uh-oh. Okay. Silence.
All right, listeners.
Rob, I don't know what your problem is, but on my screen, on my old MacBook Pro, it looks just fine.
Rob's probably using one of those stupid Androids.
Shouldn't he be here at Barbell Club?
Yeah, he should be here.
Golly.
Heather says, I know you both have enough t-shirts to wear a new one each podcast for a whole year.
I 100% do, Heather. That is truth.
Welcome back, Josh.
I've been thinking about this for like 2 weeks now. I've been like jonesing to get back here. It's amazing how much I have thoroughly... If I could just do these, like, conversations, number one, I think the world would be a better place if more people had just conversations. We're going to get into that, but...
If you're one thing, it's humble.
Yeah. I could do this all day. Now I know why Joe Rogan likes it so much. I'm not comparing myself to him, but you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to sit down and talk to somebody. And notice how when you go for a week, no one wants to talk to me, so we don't do
Nobody submits any questions?
Yeah, no one wants to talk to me.
Rob, is it still great? Oh, is it better now, Rob? Okay, cool. Okay. Rob gave us the... But this is almost the universal, like, passive-aggressive, like, it's like the thumbs up. Mandy and I have some unwritten rules of, like, if I give her the thumbs up, that's really a, like...
What about liking the, you know how you can do that now?
Yeah, the tap back?
Is that what, what is on the hierarchy of passive aggression? Liking the tap back or the actual emoji on the thumb? What's more passive aggressive? Liking the message so you really don't reply to it, or just replying with
well, in either case, it doesn't matter, right? Because like you still have to, you still get the notification that somebody texts you. I think I just answered my own question. I think that just a pure tap back. What?
Wait, we're not recording on the show. Okay, now we're recording again on GarageBand. Okay, so go ahead. The sheer passive aggression of the tap back.
I think that's worse because, like, especially if you're in a pretty quick text string, you have to go and look at like what did they actually tap back on. Instead of if it's a thumbs up, all right, cool, they got it. Like I like that. You know? I think it's
That makes sense. So
that's my
context matters.
Yes, as with all things, context matters. Yes.
All right, what are we going to talk about that's actually important this week? So we have some events recaps over the last 2 weeks.
Yes, so I will talk about barbells and bros. My biceps have finally come down from that. He wasn't sending us the okay. Thanks, Rob. Was that the gotcha? Is that what that was?
He was doing something.
Okay.
I don't think
barbells and bros. That was awesome, and it was funny. I think you actually said this. We spent more time curling at the end than we did the rest of the session of everything else that we did.
Yeah, and that wasn't planned.
No,
so
it wasn't
I
at all.
programmed it, and I'm like, okay, this is all going to be pretty equal time. Maybe the curling will actually take the least amount of time at the end.
It was like 25 minutes straight of curling.
And I want to shout out Edgardo because I know he listens to the podcast. Because when we programmed it, remember it was something like, okay, you should pick a weight that you should be able to curl 10 times on each arm, but it's pretty difficult. And Edgardo's pretty jacked. He's pretty strong.
Yeah.
And he went for the 20s. And so he's going and he's doing his burnout set, and he's not burning out because he hasn't fatigued himself. So he's hitting like 80 curls of the 20s. Like,
didn't you ask him one time and he's at like 177?
Yeah, I'm like, Edgardo, what are you at? He's like 77. I'm like, dude, you need to just
It's a great time. It was such a fun time. I mean, that's what we really want to do more of, just because it's fun to get everybody together to do something a little bit nonsensical. So I was very pleased with how that turned out.
Yeah, Barbells and Bros is a good time. And then the second event we had, did you want me to talk about this one? This was the Tampa Bay Area Classic. Yeah. This is a weightlifting competition that happens like twice a year. There's a fall and there's a spring classic. Weightlifting is in Olympic weightlifting, not curling for 25
not curling
minutes.
for 25 minutes.
And we had Coach Gene compete there. That was his first weightlifting meet. And Coach Rob, we can call him Coach Rob, USAW.
Yes,
Coach
that was
Rob,
awesome.
And photographer Rob, Street Press Media. They competed there and they did awesome, and that was a really good time. I was actually able to go out there with Emily for their snatch session, which was pretty cool. And so it was cool watching Gene compete for the first time, and as always watching Rob compete, because everybody knows Rob there, so it's cool watching like this crowd of 100 people that you don't know cheer for Rob because they all know him.
They all know him.
Yeah, it's just cool to kind of go out and be a part of that. So they did awesome. Gene, I think he PR'd his clean and jerk and then matched the PR snatch or PR'd his snatch as well. So that's pretty cool to do like in his first meet.
Yeah, in your first meet. Yeah, number one is at a meet. Number two is your first one and you hit a PR. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
I know Rob was really jonesing to get back out on the platform. I mean, he really loves to compete in Olympic weightlifting, so I was so happy for him that he did finally get that opportunity. I remember when he told me that he registered for it, it was just like he was just so giddy because he could finally get back out there and do it. And Patrick and the team over there keep pulling. They've always put on such a great atmosphere, great competition, and from what I hear, this one was no different. You know, especially given all the restrictions and difficulties of hosting people and things at a time like this. So shout out to those guys, even though this is right now it's in a private forum, but it will become public. So maybe one day he'll listen to it and give us kudos.
It was really cool just to shout them out a little more. Something they did this time, which maybe they've done at their meets before, but I haven't seen it yet, is when they were introducing all of the competitors, like how normally they'll all go out on the platform and then they'll clap and then they'll head back. When they were doing this, they like dimmed the lights and then had like not strobe lights but like colored lights and then like a
cool
smoke machine.
Yes.
So like they would walk. It was really cool. And I was like, this is a cool touch because what's that going to take, an extra 10 minutes to set up and make sure it works right, and it just makes it that much more
that's
of an
really
experience.
neat. I didn't know that. Yeah.
So that was cool to see that. Those are kind of the event recaps. I don't think we had anything else going on.
But going to upcoming events, being that today, when we're filming this, it's Friday the 9th. So tomorrow the 10th at 10:30, our ladies event is finally here, Metcons and Mimosas.
Mm-hmm.
So Coach Steph is running that. The ladies are going to get together, do 30 minutes of looks like a little Metcon, high intensity training, some core, some gluteus maximus glute work, and then enjoy some mimosas afterwards.
Very nice.
Yeah. Then after that, we've got so we already did the snatch clinic, did the clean clinic, and then we're doing the final piece of Olympic weightlifting, which is the jerk. We are hosting that here October 24th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Same kind of thing as what Gene and Rob have done with the other ones, but this time we're just going to focus on getting that barbell from the shoulder up to overhead.
That's tough. That's probably the one I need to sign up for.
Yeah, I would say that of all of them, that would be the one that I would need to sign up for as well. So that's awesome. I'm so excited that those little mini clinics have done so well. Last time we talked about it, we were a couple weeks out from the clean one and it oversold, so we actually opened up 2 spots. I know we've already got a couple spots gone on this one, so if this is something that you are looking to improve upon or you just want to be a part of, make sure that you sign up sooner rather than later and get your name on the list.
Next upcoming event, of course, we have Halloween on the 31st. That's a Saturday, which is pretty cool. we are doing our normal 9 a.m. class, but we're going to have a Halloween WOD. I think that Coach Marc James is going to be coaching that one. He's on the schedule for that day. And as always, I mean, I say this every year, I really want to see it this year, is costumes encouraged. Like, I would love to see people come do this workout, whatever it is, in a costume, just because, why not? Like, it's super
It's
cool.
always such a fun time. Do you remember one year I actually dressed up as Rich Froning?
I don't know if I either did that workout or was a member yet.
No, you were definitely a member. We were here.
Really?
Yes, we were here. You have to go back and look. I was wearing a yellow shirt. I had the head bandana. I took a cork and burned it, and then you color your beard in and everything. So we had a guy who dropped in that day, and he was going around saying things to everybody, and he wouldn't come up to me. And finally, somebody was like, "Oh yeah," and then we've got Rich Froning over here, and was just like being funny. And the guy's like, "I thought that I recognized you," and everyone's like, "That's just a costume, buddy." And yeah.
I remember there was this one year for the Halloween workout. We had his name's Spencer, and he drops in every once in a while.
Yes, usually for like a hero workout or something.
Yeah, he dropped in for the Halloween workout, and he showed up in like as though he was wearing like a plaid top, like button-down top, and like jean shorts that were like frayed. So like just
I wasn't there that day, but I remember seeing pictures of that.
and nobody else dressed up, so it was just this drop-in Spencer, and he's so nice. He's like the nicest.
He's the nicest. I guarantee anyone listening to this podcast has ran into him at Publix because everybody does, and he always says something about the gym. He's such a great guy.
Baker, right?
Yeah, Baker. That's his last name. Yeah, his kids have been members of our kids program forever. But yeah, so not only was he the only one, but he was just a drop-in.
It was so funny.
Okay, so last event, and then I'm going to go back and cover some of these comments because they're great. Friendsgiving, November 14th.
Is that unplugged?
No? Is it not recording?
It just keeps messing up, but now it's okay.
Okay. Guys, if Marc messes this recording up, this might be the last you see of him.
Yeah. I'm fired.
Is it good?
It's good now.
Okay, Marc says we're good.
We missed out on like 4 seconds of podcast.
Okay, I'm sure we'll make up for it somewhere. So, Friendsgiving, November 14th, 2 o'clock at my house. Make sure that you go on to the main CFG Facebook page, not the members page. I mean, you can get there from the members page, but please go there, reserve, let us know how many are coming in your party, and remember, we just want you to bring your favorite memorable Thanksgiving dish. So what is it that makes Thanksgiving special to you?
Stuffing.
That you want to share with everybody else. Now you have to share it. That's the key.
No.
Your belly says that you're not sharing lately.
No, I'm not sharing. It's mine. I'm bulking for the rest of my life.
All right.
What's your most memorable Thanksgiving dish? What is Josh Martin contributing?
Mashed potatoes and gravy.
Yeah, that's your
Yeah,
answer.
I love mashed potatoes and gravy, man. My belly says the same thing.
Nice.
All right, so let's go back in here. Brandon says I have similar haircuts. I'm sure that he's talking about Joe Rogan. Only if I had similar bulk as Joe Rogan did, both in my muscles and my bank account.
Yeah, but do you want his height?
Isn't he like 5'5" or something?
Yeah.
He's like 5'5" or 5'6". Yeah, no.
What if you had his bank account?
Yeah, I'll be 4'10". I'll be 4 foot. I don't care. No.
He is 5'7".
Okay, so Heather, am I encouraged to drink after the Metcon tomorrow? Yes, you're always encouraged to drink after your Metcons. I don't know what your coach is telling you. And then, Brandon, the neck. Yeah, so every time that somebody mentions the neck on his podcast, he mentions does this product placement for this neck device thing that you like put on your head and you like strengthen your neck or whatever. He's not sponsored by him or anything, but that company's probably sold a bajillion of those devices just because Joe Rogan mentions it.
Jeez. $100 million Spotify contract.
Just to be censored.
Let's get one of those.
Okay. That's it for
events. Rob said the day before states. I think he's referring to the jerk clinic because state weightlifting championships are coming up. I guess on the 25th.
Yeah.
That Rob is competing.
Rob is going to attend.
Gilbert's competing in also, but I'm not.
He should be. Yeah. He better. So I just got back from being in North Carolina again. It's glorious. glorious. It was amazing weather as always. We actually stayed in a little town about 30 minutes southwest of Asheville called Brevard. It's a little bit closer to where we spent all of our time hiking. Great time. Read 2 books while I was there.
In the week you were gone, 2 books?
Well, I finished the second one, which we'll get to in just a second. I finished that one this morning. I read the final chapter, so I've detailed, I think, my reading practice, but I try to read a chapter, 10 to 15 pages, maybe 20 pages, depending on the chapter length, every day. But yeah, I finished the one that we talked about last time, Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss's book. Amazing. We're actually going to do something I briefly talked to you about with the staff, where I just kind of do a little, I don't know, what do we say, like a little book club or something about that. You know, before I forget, one of these days we got to reverse the order, because everyone's always getting this side view, and you know, they just see you and all your glory over there. I mean, maybe I want to look at the camera instead of having to break my neck every time.
I don't even look at the camera. I just let Billy
just scroll through comments.
No.
Okay, so wait, okay? Before I get to the book, I did have a revelation.
Whoa!
I want to share a story with you.
Did you go out into the woods for 3 days in North Carolina and come back with this revelation?
I went on quite a few walkabouts, Mark. If I was in the Australian outback, that reference would probably make more sense. But
okay.
Yeah, so there's a hike that we do in the DuPont State Forest. It's about 3 miles from like the parking lot when we start the hike, and you get to the final waterfall. So all said and done, you know, there's maybe a little bit of elevation gain up and down, you know, rocks, dirt, path, and all this. You get to this waterfall that's like 150-foot cascade. I've gotten pictures from myself there every single year since every trip we've taken. Anyways, in order to actually make it up to like the base of the falls, not only do you have to make it through that 3-mile hike initially, but then you also have to go over these, you know, huge rocks, and the water and everything's slippery, and there's the spray coming off, and so there's a balance component. Obviously, you need some endurance. You need a little bit of aerobic capacity. You need some basic strength. You need some upper body strength, especially if you're carrying children. Anyways, we get all the way up there, and we kind of hang out, do some pictures and videos and all this. On the way back, as we're making it across this little rock path, we come up on. Did I tell you the story already? Maybe
with
have
a
heard
couple.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to tell it to everybody else. So we come upon this older couple, and when I say older, I mean they were like 85 at least, 85 years old, and they're just sitting there on this rock, looking at this waterfall, just watching it just pour water, which is a very mesmerizing. Like, you just lose time watching these things. It's amazing. But anyways, they're sitting there, you know, and they're kind of in our pathway where we're walking, so they see us, they're like, oh my gosh, you know, we got little kids, come on. And I'm like, oh, if these people get up, they're going to slide up these rocks and, you know, fall, but they're just being so nice, let us get out of the way. Well, I notice when they get up out of the way, this sweet little old man and his wife, they both got in their hands a can of Busch Light, which I thought was just the most awesome thing in the world. They had their little cooler full of Busch Light, and so, you know, here they are, 85 probably years old. They hiked all the way up to this mountain, hanging out here, drinking their Busch Light, and I was like thinking, just typical coach think, right? I want to be on the plan for fitness that gets me there. Like, that's where I want to be. And when I'm 85, that I can go on this hike, hang out with my wife, watch the waterfall, you know, hang out with some younger people, but show them, like, you can still do this at my age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that should be, not that your goal should be everybody's goal, but do you think everybody should strive for some level of that?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, you know, striving for longevity, vitality, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think for the vast majority of people, and it sounds like we're beating a dead horse sometimes, but if you really look and continue to ask deep, probing questions in terms of like your intentions and why you do what you do, and this is any aspect of life, but specifically for us like fitness, that's probably what it boils down to. So I'll give you a great, for instance, because I'm looking at the InBody poster over here. Say if you want to lose 10 pounds or whatever, and I say, okay, I snap my fingers and you're down 10 pounds right now. You know, what does that do for you, right? And so you continue to ask these questions, and what we come to grips with, if people are vulnerable and honest, is they just want to live a happy life, think clear thoughts, you know, have longevity, vitality, be able to enjoy life, you know, versus some other thing that they're thinking about.
Right. Would you go with Bush Light or something else?
I don't know. That looked pretty darn appetizing, let me tell you.
That's a pretty good revelation.
It was just really cool because it just put a lot of. One of the things I love about being up in the mountains is it does put a lot of clarity into your head. You know, you think good thoughts. You're away from so many distractions, especially when you're up on these hikes and you get no service. So it's been good. It's been really gratifying.
How many hikes did you go on?
I mean, we hiked every single day. Most days we hiked twice a day. So we probably 7 days we were there. The first day we couldn't do anything because it was raining.
How cathartic is that though? Just kind of hanging out.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is really cool.
So even when it rains, you're like, this is fine. This is so cool.
And so I never actually knew this, and people are gonna laugh at me when I say this. But until we moved into our house in the trails, I've never really lived anywhere that had a lot of really dense tree cover over the top of you. And one of the things that you discover is even in a torrential downpour, when you're under these tree canopies and it's real dense, you don't actually really get rained on. Like these little sprinkles will come through, and unless the rain is coming in sideways like it often does here in Florida, you'll get soaked. But like there's been times when it's been pouring and I've walked the dog out, and because of the tree cover we have, it's not like you're getting soaked, you're getting a little bit of drizzle.
Uh-huh.
So it's the same thing up there. So these rainy days, like there were plenty of days when we went back in July. Every day that we hiked, it was raining, but once you get up into the mountains under the tree cover, I mean, there are a couple of days where we got it coming in sideways or when we were out in the open, but for the most part, it's, yeah.
How did Jesse and Quinn do with all the hiking?
They love it. And so this is the interesting part. People, like Stephanie Ball has said this for years, because for as long as she's known us and been a member of the gym, she's always like, why do you guys continue to go to the same place? You got to get out more. We have started to explore more areas, but what we've found is that Asheville, and doing the hiking and waterfall stuff, is the one thing that all four of us just love more than anything. So it's not like when we go to a baseball game or go to a Gator game, Jesse and I absolutely love it, but Mandy, especially, and Quinn would be like, that's not really my thing. Mm-hmm. Or vice versa, when we went to like a little ballet performance with Quinn, you know, to watch, you know, this, the Nutcracker earlier in the year, it's like, I'll go because it's something that she loves, but it's not like my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But that's like everybody just absolutely gets a ton of enjoyment from it. So it's just phenomenal family.
That's awesome. Hopefully you guys keep that up as Jesse and Quinn get older and like they maintain that love for it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I said this to Steph because she said something about, you know, whenever we got back, her and I were talking and asking about how the trip went. And it's really a place that, number one, I would love to share with my family, my immediate family, mom and dad. We want to have them go up there, but you know, we also want to open it up to, you know, bringing the staff up there. I'd love to take you guys there, and I would love to have a group from the gym go up there. I mean, it's just something about it that, you know, is everybody going to have the same experience? No, definitely not. But I think a lot of people will kind of see like what it is that we like about it so much.
Right.
You're freaking me out with this microphone thing. Is it working?
Yeah, I just keep making sure I'm getting paranoid. So I'm gonna kind of backtrack, but put two things you said together. So it rained a lot on that first day, and then you also said you finished 2 books. So I know you wanted to talk about the books a little bit.
Yeah. So the first one we already talked about last time, so I won't belabor that. If you are in, especially like if you're in business for yourself, I think that last one would be a phenomenal one for you. Or if you're like a team lead or something, I think that would be a phenomenal one for you. But it's just a great book in general to teach you how to have more productive conversation. But this one today is called, I don't know if people can see this, but it's called Love Your Enemies, and it is by a gentleman named Arthur C. Brooks. And the subtext of it is how decent people can save America from the culture of contempt. So the background behind me getting this book, in downtown Brevard, there's a little bookstore that we have gone into for the past several years that we've gone up there, and we always get something, just because it's a nice, cool little local bookstore. And so this time I was browsing the shelves, and I always pick them up and read a couple pages, and this one was really compelling, and I read some reviews on it, and I just thought that given the nature of what I don't necessarily mean like the political climate, but just like the climate around, social media and narratives and everything that's going on in the world, I thought this would be a cool perspective, because the word contempt definitely does come to my mind when I think about how, people are treating one another online and in the media and things like that. So I was really interested to hear what this guy had to say, and I think I was telling you about this the other day. I think that the people who most need to read that book, and you know me as a glass half full person, I'm full of hope. However, in this instance, I don't think that the people who would most benefit from reading this book would take the time to read it and absorb it and apply it. Having said that, I do think that if you are a person that has hope for our generation, has hope for America, or has aspirations of seeing things improve, or you're interested in where this contempt kind of comes from and different perspectives on it, I just think that it would be a really, really great read. It's fascinating. I'll give you a great statistic that I picked up from the book. And this is about, me, I'm not a political person at all, so that's not why I picked up this book. But I did find it telling. A survey of Americans after the 2016 election said that 20%, not 20%, 1/6 of all people surveyed after the 2016 election said that they turned their back and ceased any contact and communication with a family member who disagreed with them politically.
Wow.
1/6 of people surveyed. Like, just because you're voting for somebody else than I am.
That is unbelievable, because it's something that funny enough, I saw it, I think, on social media recently, is that we live in a country where that's allowed. That's the luxury of the country that we live in, is every 4 years we get to go somewhere and we get to choose who we think would be best fit. It's up to us to choose, and we have the freedom to vote and to make that choice.
Right.
And I think I'm not going to say evolved, I think we've devolved as a country to a point where when we go and exercise that right, if it is against the other 49% or 51% or 50% of people that aren't making the same vote, because let's face it, most of the time elections are fairly close, right? And it's now, especially nowadays, it's going to be really, really close. If you make a choice that is against that other half, you're seen as an enemy.
Yeah. It's funny that that's the name of the book, right? And that's what he talks about, is people paint the quote unquote other side. It's like an us versus them. They are the enemy.
I wonder, and I'm not going to sit here and, like you said, you're generally a glass half full person. I see myself as the same. I think it's just the nature of who we are and the environment we're in. It's bred us that way, and we are.
Yeah, I seek to foster that for sure.
I think that, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything is fine and hunky-dory, because we are in this extreme climate right now where I wonder if that 1/6 number is going to be higher this year. So, 1/6 of people turning back on a family member. I wonder if that number is going to be greater this year because of the way things are.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. We won't have the answer to that until, maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road, another survey comes out. It wouldn't surprise me, but, maybe this is just being an idealist, but, I do have hope that when two people can have a conversation like this and talk things out and even disagree, perhaps. I'm not saying that we're disagreeing, but like if we were, you know, we could disagree about things, but I'm not going to think that you're a bad person for it or tell you to get out or, you know, any number of those things. And I think that if more people can have real conversations, not online, but actually face to face, so I can feel your voice inflection and your intonation and see your body language and it not be a mob mentality where it's us and, you know, 500 people against them and 500 people. That's why I'm a big believer. And, you know, people always want to have this aspirational thing to change the world. And first it starts with you, and then it starts with your family, or then it moves to your family and the people that you immediately have influence over. But it's got to be conversations, you know, and you have to be okay with going into something knowing that you're going to disagree, but that not being the end of the world. One of the things that they identified in the book is that across every variable that you can imagine, studies have been done on different cultures, different demographics, races, ages, sexes, countries, anything that you can imagine. We all are innately born feeling a certain way about 5 specific traits. So they are compassion, fairness, authority, purity, and loyalty to a tribe or to a group. And then the guy does go into, I think he actually writes for either the New York Times or the Washington Post. I'm sure somebody's going to slander me for putting him on one side and not the other, but whatever, let's have a conversation. No, but he does talk about, you know, like the right or the left. What he found and what research has proven time and time and time again is that the left and the right, even on the extreme sides, all agree on fairness and compassion. That's what the goal is. Mm-hmm. And whatever belief that they have. Now, the means to that end is where people disagree, and that's when a good, healthy competition of ideas can bring about innovation and best way to serve the greatest number of good, all those things. But like the underlying values, people actually agree on that, you know? But it does take a lot of self-reflection, and that's something that I work diligently on, is figuring out, you know, okay, what are my issues, my biases, you know, where do I have blind spots? And I learned a lot about myself even from reading that book. So I do think that if that kind of stuff does interest you, and I certainly hope that the people that are listening, that it does, in terms of becoming more self-aware, learning to love your enemies a little bit more, I think we'd all be in a much better spot.
And I do want to put it out there because you actually said this on, it might have been the first episode where you came back, like Michael Jordan. You retired from the podcast and then you came back.
I'm back!
You said, we will never discuss politics on this show. And I don't think this is necessarily discussing politics or our political views on things. It more or less, this is an ad for the book. No, this isn't an ad for the book.
Yeah,
but
right. Where's my royalty, Arthur C. Brooks?
Yeah, but no, I think it is more just a conversation on, I think, the status and how of the country right now, how we interpret it, and kind of how that book outlined how it is right now, and verbalized it a little bit better than maybe I could. I really like what you said about disagreeing but not being at each other's throats. I mean, you and I, we had a conversation this morning at 8:30 before the 9 a.m. class about something, and we disagreed.
Right.
I asked you, do X, Y, Z, and you said no, A, B, C. Do you? And I said, yes. I disagree. I think the answer is yes. And then we're still sitting here having a normal conversation.
Right.
We can disagree on things.
Right.
And I just say X, Y, Z because that was more of a political discussion. But it's just, I don't know where I was really going with that thought. It's just kind of what came to my mind after what you just said.
Yeah, you know, I think what that book did for me at a very maybe elementary level compared to some other people that are really well versed in politics and left and right and all that kind of stuff. I think what it did is just brought a little bit more clarity to some of the thoughts that I always have swimming around in my head, and it's funny because we're actually going to talk about that a little bit more with one of the the listener questions that we have today surrounding autonomy. But this is one of the reasons that I love this format is it does allow for the nuance to come out and to be openly talked about and discussed and potentially disagreed with. But where things go wrong is, and I'm not like harping on social media, I'm not some like, old guy, put your phones down or something like that, although an argument can be made, but that's a discussion for another day. But I do think that there are problems that arise when you're catching things in 60-second clips and snippets and 350 instead of 3,500 word blogs that you read just because you want your news quick and fast and easy. And the issues that not just the country but us as individuals face are not small, like easily solved things. They're usually complex solutions to complex problems.
Would you say that would be one of your biggest takeaways from the book? And if so, or if not, what would you say some of your biggest takeaways are?
Honestly, I think my biggest one is that I need to do a better job of seeking out those who don't share similar opinions and backgrounds as myself. And that could be with anything. And so I'll give you, for instance, for the last about 7 or 8 months, and I've kind of talked to you a little bit about this, but I've really started to seek out people that challenge the knowledge that I've gained in almost 20 years of being a fitness coach, things that I hold really near and dear and true to what I think are the best solutions for clients. I'm trying to see the complete opposite of that and what kind of merit do those things hold. So that, and then a reinforcement from the book is I do feel like we're on the right track doing things like this, having conversation, and not just trying to put something out there that's catchy or clickbaity for 60 seconds.
You kind of took the words right out of my mouth. Is that we're also in this time where information is so easily accessible, and we'll say has been since basically the release of a smartphone.
Right.
When you have so much information at your fingertips, that I would say to many people, I don't know if it would be the majority, but many people are going to prefer those clickbaity titles, those 60-second Instagram clips, even something as short as a 2 or 3 minute video, rather than listen to a 75-minute podcast where we're discussing these, you could call them issues, or watch a 96-minute presidential debate from last week, or the vice presidential debate, which was this week. Because I think people will just say, I'll just go on this website that I like to go on tomorrow morning and catch the taglines. Well, why don't you just take the time and learn it for yourself and watch the conversation. I don't know if you call it presidential debate a conversation, but it was, watch it for yourself.
Yeah, there is something to be said for seeking out information, taking the time to do it. What year were you born?
97.
So that was right, I think, before Google launched.
Yeah. Something
right around there, right? So think about this. Right the year that you were born, if I wanted to get online, I heard somebody tell this story, so it's worthwhile for me to use you as an example on this. The year you were born, if I wanted to get online, if I wanted to find out what the difference in tax codes were from Florida to Georgia, you know how I had to do that?
Encyclopedia.
I had to get my car, go to the library, use my library card, and go find some reference material to figure out what the tax codes were there. So find the book, find the page, all that kind of stuff. So, it would have taken a couple of hours to do so, and I would have learned some things, in that search. Now, you could probably type it up on your computer and in 0.25 seconds have the answer.
People must have been so stupid.
We were dumb, Mark. We were so dumb.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
But that was just an aside to kind of reinforce your point about how easily information comes to your fingertips.
Yeah.
Rob was making a joke about me. 2 comments in a row. One, if we switch sides, I'm going to wash out the feed. We'll see. Challenge accepted, Rob. I'm going to go get some. Actually, I got quite a bit of vitamin D. I know you can't tell it from my skin color, but I did.
You did.
Over the past week, yeah.
See it.
Almost blended in with my shirt.
Close.
He also made a joke about red wine, for those that don't know, and this can be a story that I tell another day. I am terribly allergic to red wine. Yeah, very bad. Rob's heard that story. Now he reminds me about it. I don't know, that's 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row, I think he's reminded me of that story. And then Heather, yes, hopefully I'm fit enough to do some hiking in Colorado, because it is North Carolina mountains to the 10th power, I think. That's why I never say that, like, people that go skiing on the East Coast, like, oh, go West Virginia. That ain't skiing, brother. You need to go to the Rockies.
What about Vermont?
No, that's not skiing. Go to the Rockies.
You can make some people very mad.
I'm sure I just pissed off a lot of people. But what's new? All right, so we're probably 45 minutes in, and maybe we get to some questions.
Okay.
I'm super excited about these couple of questions we have today. Is the pod running okay?
Pod's running, we're good. I'm gonna, I'll go over these questions quickly because I think we got a lot to say about them. So
are you putting a time limit on me or no?
We could. I don't think we should. I
Okay.
think this is the meat here, even though we just got pretty deep with that last conversation. So we talked about client autonomy in the last conversation in the last podcast.
Yes.
And I think that could take up an entire podcast series. I think that's a very diverse and complex issue to talk about. But it raised some really good questions from some listeners last week. And so one of our members approached me, and they are pretty accomplished in their position, I'll say. They have graduate degrees. They're very where they work. They're a very big deal. They're high up there, and I don't think this person would like to be shouted out by
That's fine.
So that's why I'm being very secretive.
Yeah.
And so their client about autonomy was, what about the community factor? So what if somebody, and you're probably going to need context from the last episode, so go to listen to that if you haven't. There's chapter markers to help you out. What if somebody is autonomous enough to do all of what we do on their own?
Do fitness on their own. They don't need somebody to tell them what to do.
But they want to stick around because they love being a part of this thing that we're a part of, this community, this culture. What if? Because I think they were referring, and just to give briefly give some context, last week you mentioned that if somebody does not want to strive to be autonomous, then this isn't the place for them. And so that's where their question came from, is what if they want to be autonomous and they are autonomous enough, but they still just want to hang out because they love being a part of it. Okay.
Yes.
Go.
So there's a lot to unpack
Yes.
with that, because there was definitely a couple of questions in there. So I'll start off by saying that the ideas that you have in your head are crystal clear about specific topics.
Right.
So in my head, the idea that I have surrounding client autonomy, being able to do things on your own, knowing what to do, how to do it, why to do it, all of that stuff is very, very clear in my head. It's not so clear when it comes out. I'm getting more clarity because the more that I talk about it, the more that I can put structure and even process to that. The process part I actually think that we have down pretty well, but the structure of what it looks like to the client, to the member, I think the more that we talk about it, the more that it makes sense and the more clarity that there is. So that's kind of I need to put that out there, because sometimes it can sound like I just spent, a week in North Carolina doing meth, and then my stuff is coming out clear. So there's that. Then we can get into like specific definitions. So what what does it mean for somebody to be autonomous? It's, if you look at like the root word of it, it's just basically like self-governance, so having the freedom to choose what you are going to do. Now, in this context, speaking specifically for fitness, what we're talking about is, number one, why you are doing what you are doing. So it's very intentional when I come in here today, what I am actually going to do. I know why I'm doing it. I know what I'm going to do, and I know how I'm going to do it. I don't necessarily need somebody to tell me, but that word necessarily is probably the really important, crux of the whole word. It doesn't mean that you don't need it, but you can still benefit from that. So, the example that I would give to this person, who I love dearly, and I, know their background, education, and we have very deep philosophical questions like this we have in the past. I would say that in terms of and this is going to come across arrogant, and I don't mean it this way, but like from a beacon standpoint, like being the leader and the owner of the gym, that's me. I know exactly what I should be doing. I know what to program. I know how much weight, how many reps, how far to run, what wattage to use, all those things, what to eat, how much to sleep, how I manage my stress. I know all those things, so I am very, very autonomous. But I show up every single day with my routine because humans are designed to be around other humans, It might be at the gym, it might not be at the gym. Like, you love watching movies. I love watching movies. I don't have to tell you what to watch, but I guarantee you that if you and I go to a movie together, especially like a comedy or something, we're going to have a heck of a lot more fun than if you just sit at home and watch it on your own.
Right.
So in terms of what about the community factor, I think that's huge. I think that's a huge benefit. I think that a lot of things can be derived from it. And it's hard because that is what I would describe as the unmeasurable or the immeasurable. You can't measure what ancillary benefit you get from the community, but you can feel it. You know it when you're amongst it, and it's like you know that you belong. So from a chemical, and not to get real super deep into the science and the weeds, but there's really 4 what are considered like happiness chemicals. So it's endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. So the first 2, endorphins and dopamine, are actually what people get. And this is going to sound terrible, but like exercise addicts, they're really like addicted to that. The cortisol release from the stress response, but it's really like the dopamine. It's also what you get whenever you do cocaine or pick up your phone and get a notification from Facebook that somebody liked your post.
Whoa.
So those are actually known as the selfish chemicals. Serotonin and oxytocin are the selfless chemicals. They are ones that get injected into your body that give you the sense of, number one, that you are safe, that you belong, and that you are a part of a bigger purpose. So what about the community factor? I think it's huge. What if somebody is autonomous enough to work out on their own but wants to stick around? To me, like, that is the ultimate, right? Like, that is really what we want. And so when I said what I said on the last episode, that it's like, if you don't want that, then this might not be the place for you. I think to give a little bit more context and nuance to that statement, what I would say is, if I'm sitting down having a conversation with somebody initially, right, in our intro session, and we're getting into things, they very well probably don't want that. And we don't even talk about that, right? We don't come right out and say, like, we're going to teach you, how to do these things, and then we never want you to come back again. That's not what it's about. But as a coach, like, I'll turn the tables and ask you this question, man, because I get this from owners and coaches alike almost every day. I've got a member in my class who doesn't want to be coached. So what should I do? Should I just let him, like, he knows what he's doing. He's, he doesn't move the best, or he doesn't do this, or he doesn't do that, but like he doesn't take the coaching. He said openly that he doesn't want to coach me. Like, what do you do as a coach?
I don't think you found the right way to coach him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly, like, your job is to coach.
Yeah.
So even when Jay comes in, or when I come in, or when you or Emily or anybody else that I would say is really bumping up right against that idea of autonomy, I don't ignore them. I'm still coaching them. But you told this story a couple episodes ago on the podcast about me coming to you one day and saying, like, hey man, something's not right. You didn't perform like I would expect you to in that workout. And what did I tell you to do that day?
Go sleep.
Go home and take a nap. Like, so there's where the value of that continued coach-member, coach-client relationship. So maybe for the first 6 months, year, 6 years, 60 years, it is about here's how to deadlift, here's how many reps, here's how hard to go, here's why I'm having you do this that connects to your why for what you're doing and what your goals ultimately are. But over time, what that relationship might evolve to is, like, you just told me, what did you and Emily celebrate on Wednesday?
2 years.
So your 2-year anniversary. And so now we talk about things like love your enemies, and so the relationship really evolves, and it's still a coach, but sort of a mentorship relationship where we're talking about much different things, not necessarily sets and reps and weight, but absolutely the value of the community. Come in, be a part of it. Because I also am a big believer, and we talked about this last time, like there's a difference between teaching, you're going out and fishing for somebody and handing them the fish versus teaching them to fish. But then what do we want that person to do? We want them to teach the next person to fish. So the other thing that we see with, veterans that have been around for a long, long time is if you're in a class of 12 people and somebody's got a question, they might go over to Jose or Brandon or Stephanie or Emily or, Bart or somebody who's been here for a while and kind of knows what's going on. They ask a question and they almost, they provide a level of coaching, Now, they're not the head coach or they're not the leader of that session at that time, but like that's such a great thing when you see that start to happen. And it becomes, I guess it could kind of become almost like a little pay it forward thing. Like now you are a part of the process to spread the message, so to speak.
I want to backtrack a little because you mentioned, when you were talking about hormones, you mentioned that in the effects that the community and culture can have on someone, you consider it immeasurable. I'm not going to disagree, but I'm going to question. Couldn't you, and it's only because I'm, say we're going to have a conversation because I disagree to a degree. Could you, of course, perform some sort of scientific study where you are measuring affect or mood or something based on, say, people in a class. So say if you're in a class alone versus on a Monday morning versus you're here on Saturday at 9 a.m. when we have 12 people in the class, and I give you two different or two copies of the same quiz, we'll say, and it's just measuring your affect with each one. Could you still not measure and kind of use that? I guess you could eventually use those results, somebody's affect, somebody's mood, to further coach them. So say, hey Josh, like, I know that you have a better time in here on Saturday morning, or like Friday morning, or Thursday morning when Justin Scott and Tabrez and Bart and Melissa Z, like, they're in here. So like, as your coach, I'm recommending to you, you should probably come in here Thursday through Saturday. What do you think of that? Like, is that measurable? Is that necessary? Is it possible?
To measure it?
Yeah. The effect of community and culture.
Well,
or does it go deeper than?
Yeah, I think that you could probably measure a lot of those types of things, but really what I'm thinking of long term is like the downstream effect, right? So if somebody comes in, like our first value that we have here is experience joy. If somebody comes in one day and part of the way that we deliver on that is smiling and saying their name, I mean that's a directive, right? And we don't deliver on that, might not have much impact on them.
Right.
In that moment, they could still register as like, yeah, it was a great time. You know, all the measures that you're talking about, right? But what about if that persists for a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? They never get a smile and they never get their name said. That might not be like the straw that broke the camel's back, but it could be the seed that was planted.
Yeah.
Like from that instance. So I know I kind of flipped that on its head, but the way that I think of it is, it's really hard to quantify the downstream effects of all that, you know, positivity and things like that. Mm-hmm. Now, there is a giant caveat to this, and this might not be a popular opinion, but if there is not a part of you that can do what you're doing for yourself, then there is no amount of community that is going to satisfy that long term.
So, people need to be implicitly motivated.
Yes, absolutely. To a degree, right? Now, like I said, I think that it's more important that we do get the chemical hit from serotonin and oxytocin, just because of what we know about them, is that it, you know, shows that, you know, the part about the tribe and that you belong and that you are a part of a bigger purpose, and that's why like the fourth value at CFG is live with faith, and that's actually what it is all about, is knowing that you are living, you know, for a larger purpose than just sucking up air on this planet for however many years you're going to be around here. So, yeah, I think that that's important, and especially for the people that are autonomous, even if it's, you know, I think there are varying degrees of it, but I would say that, you know, a good portion of people are. But I also think that COVID taught us a lot of lessons with regards to this too, because if you're, did my internet go out?
It's
still
still
good?
on my screen. Let's see,
okay.
give it a couple seconds.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you
The live stream cut out, yeah.
Hold on, let me see.
You want me to pause the recording?
No.
Okay.
It says it's still live though.
If you guys are still listening, you should leave a 5-star review on the episode. Do that real quick while we figure
As
out.
long as that's right, is it?
I'll try refreshing the page.
It says that it's still live on my phone, although my computer's about dead. Anyways, where was I going with that? Oh, so if your identity, you know, was wrapped up in, I need to get to the gym to satisfy this need, to what is actually happening internally. I don't know if people know this, but it's like, hey, your body is craving this endorphin and dopamine hit that is used to getting. That's actually not healthy long term, right? You should, and that's why I think the autonomy piece is ultimately super important long term, is so that it does become a part of your lifestyle and not just, I have to do this or something like that.
We talk about that to a degree, but it's a lot more black and white and a lot more, we'll say, not as personal. When I took exercise psychology in school, as it was just talking about all, you know, the different forms. It's like 6 different forms of what's it called? Motivation. And there's like 5 different forms of external motivation or explicit. No, I think it was external motivation. And then the
Intrinsic and extrinsic.
Yeah, extrinsic. Yeah, that's it. Intrinsic.
Intrinsic.
I said implicit earlier.
You did. I didn't want to call you out, but now you're calling yourself out.
Well, I said it and I knew it was wrong. I was like, that doesn't sound right. No, intrinsic motivation. And it was a lot more black and white, so it's cool to be able to listen and have a conversation like this and be able to verbalize, okay, it's long term, this is what we're striving for. This is something that just becomes something you do. It just becomes, not even because, partly because you like it, but just because it's something you do.
Yeah.
So, cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really cool point, and maybe we can move on to the next one after this. But it's something you do, not who you are.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty good. I wonder how many people, just to bring it back to social media, there's all these influencers on social media. It's like, how many of that is who they are versus something they do?
Yeah.
And so, because you don't really post on your personal Instagram,
no,
ever, right?
No.
It's like, and you don't really post that much on Facebook, too much. You
There's actually a long-running joke that I have with my college roommate Ann Mandy that I deliberately only do 1 or 2 posts a year because everyone's waiting all year for them, and I get a bunch of likes.
And so it's just, imagine these influencers to where they're on a schedule where they're making, and I understand from a business point it's different, we have a social media schedule, but these people that, feel as though they need to post their workouts all the time and gain a following, and it's like, dude, you own a gym.
Yeah.
You're part of other businesses.
You do bring up a really good point, and truth be told, that's probably why I still have my personal Facebook, is because you can't have a business without a personal. And if I didn't have the business, I probably wouldn't have a personal.
Wow.
And this is not like, oh my gosh, if you do, there's something wrong. It's not that at all, but that's just not me. However, there is a far larger majority of people that this is not them either, like long form, or being comfortable on camera, or talking, but this is where I'm really comfortable. If somebody wants to have a conversation, this is what I live for. And this is, to me, this is what coaching is about. It's, Heather's been around for how many years now, and I love talking with Heather. I love talking with you. I love talking with anybody that wants to sit down and have a conversation. That's to me is the real value, and I think why I took to ultimately coaching as well as I did is because I think to be effective at it, you do have to be good at conversation, which I've really worked at over the years, but you also have to enjoy it. There's plenty of people that wouldn't like this, to sit down and talk and be vulnerable, and I've said some pretty, what can sound like crazy things and could turn some people off potentially, but the people that like it, then there are people.
Right. Yeah.
Heather, yes, wants versus needs. That's such a great point, and I know you and I talked about this just from a coaching and programming perspective, it's a delicate balance that you have to strike when you are coaching somebody, that there is an element that you, to a certain degree, do need to give, especially in the early stages of a relationship. Give them a good bit of what they want, or what they are expecting to get from your program. One, because it creates a lot of buy-in, but two, it breeds trust, and you learn actually a lot as a coach by doing that. But ultimately, what ends up happening is there's this beautiful, transition that develops as they start to trust you more through you educating them, where you give them what they actually need to get closer and closer to their goals and make progress. And now they end up wanting what they need. And that's the ultimate.
Right.
Cool.
Man,
we're still on.
I had something good to say. Totally
No.
We'll move on. We'll see if I remember it. So that was the listener question regarding client autonomy, and of course we branched off quite a bit and talked about some good things there. Then the next question. This is, the last topic for today. maybe we gotta put a time on this. We are at an hour and 4 minutes, almost an hour and 5. It's funny that you typed this because I had the same conversation with, I think, 1 or 2 different people this week. And the question is, how much do genetics play a role in achieving X, Y, Z, in achieving a goal? I don't know what context you were talking about this, but the person I was talking to, we were talking about like competitive gymnasts and comparing them to functional fitness athletes or CrossFitters, whatever you want to call them, and football players and genetics in that way.
Yeah.
You expand on, because you actually typed this out, you expand on what you're thinking.
So this is probably in the top 10, maybe top 5 most asked questions that I've ever gotten as a coach in my entire career. And it might not come in this exact form. It could come in the form of, let's just be completely blunt, open, and honest. It could come in the form of an excuse. Oh, I can't do this because I'm genetically predisposed to insert whatever pathological thing you've got, right? Oh, I can't do this because this, my mom had this, or my dad had this, or they suffered from that. Right?
I can't roll my eyes harder when do you have this because I can't X this and
yeah. So so the whole how much do genetics play a role? So let me quickly make a distinction. I'm about to drop my computer, but I'll make a distinction because you did bring up the sporting aspect. Now, if you have half a brain, you can look at sports and see clearly that genetics and what I would call selection, sports self-select for their sport. And then within the sport, different positions self-select. You don't see guys the size of Shaquille O'Neal being point guards in the NBA. On the opposite end, I don't know if this is way before your time, I don't know if you know this guy, but Muggsy Bogues and Spud Webb, 2 of the smallest guys ever playing in the NBA, they're never going to be centers in the NBA. Right? Somebody my size would never be a center or a lineman in the NFL. Right? So most sports have evolved to the point where they self-select for the sport and then for positions within the sport, just by their very nature, characteristics, things like that. Even a sport as young as CrossFit is, has pretty much self-selected up to this point, within an inch or 2, maybe a couple of inches in height, and then also body weight plus or minus, let's just call it 8 pounds if you want to make the podium. Like we know pretty tight parameters of what to expect from the males and the females.
Right.
Teams, there's definitely more variation, but even that to a certain degree is self-selecting.
Team athletes are generally bigger.
They are, yeah.
So it's...
okay, so now let's remove all that and let's go to the more practical stuff like the real world. So, how much do genetics play a role in, you grew up in a family that has a history of heart disease, or diabetes, or obesity, or any number of chronic, metabolic disease or anything like that. So let's put that into one bucket, and then let's talk about another bucket like genetic mutation. There's something severe, right? That's the hand you're dealt, right? And then that is it. But let's go back to that first bucket. The way that I like to explain this to people is that yes, absolutely, genetics play a role into how your body adapts to whatever stress is put on it. That's true for everybody, no matter what genetic pool you came from, whether it's somebody with diabetes, heart disease, any of that stuff. The best analogy that I have ever heard or used to describe this, though, is it's the difference between having 1 or 2 or 10 light switches with dimmers inside of your body. So, if you come from a family, Mark, that has a history of heart disease, that light switch is now inside of you.
Yes.
Right? But I don't. So that light switch is not for me, right? And now, for you, it's not just like You got it. It's a dimmer switch, right? So you have that. Now, here's where the conversation usually gets particularly uncomfortable for people, is that the amount that switch gets turned up, i.e. the light gets brighter, you get more closer and closer to developing heart disease or becoming a diabetic or getting obesity, has to do with how closely do your behaviors and your environment, do they mimic those of the people whose gene pool that you come from.
Right.
So, I actually wrote about this. Yes, Allie, these are FSU colors apparently. I'm burning this shirt now. Thanks for pointing that out. You took me off of my point that I was making anyways. Okay. Your decision, this is where the discomfort comes with the conversation. Your genetics place that dimmer switch in your body. You and your choices in your daily life, your lifestyle, determine how high up that dimmer switch gets turned. Don't exercise, sleep poorly, live a really stressed life, eat poorly, your dimmer switch is turned up to the max. Now there's a giant caveat, right? And we talked about like the mutation aspect. Some people are just dealt a really, really crappy hand. And you never know when that switch is put in you, how high up the dimmer is already turned. So let's say that we both come from a family of heart disease. Your dimmer switch begins at 1. Mine begins at 8. And then we live the exact same lifestyle. Who do you think is going to succumb first? Me, right? We made the same choices. We lived similar lives. We had the same genetic pool, but mine was turned up significantly higher than yours. Now, I'm no scientist. I'm not a medical doctor, but I've been around the game long enough to speak confidently about that. However, there is the human factor. You can be dealt a really, really crappy hand, or you can be dealt a really, really good hand, and you can get that switch at a 9.9 and make all kinds of crappy decisions. Still live a great life.
Right.
Statistically speaking, though, if you want to play the odds, you should just make the choices that have the greater chance and likelihood that you don't turn that thing up too much. So, some people, and I've seen this in our field for so long, is they like to oh no, it's not genetics, it's your choices. No, everything's genetic. Everything is. Jay's family, and I wrote a blog post so I can hopefully talk about this. He and I, when we first started working together, he's got history of heart disease and has high cholesterol. That goes into his daily life, and he's very aware of the choices he makes, not only in regards to his nutrition, but with our training as well. Because stress is stress is stress. So genetics play a massive role. But you cannot just play that card without also understanding and playing the card that your personal responsibility and choices have on the genetic component. I don't know if Allie is excited about the answer that I gave here. I'm going to say that yes, that is why she wants me to maybe mic drop or something like that.
Yeah. So, I guess takeaway in the way I'm interpreting this is because you said genetics are a thing. Like
absolutely,
everything comes down to genetics.
Everything.
It's not the excuse. The choices that you're making with the hand you've been dealt are an excuse. So we'll use the hand dealt example again. You're dealt a bad hand in poker. Do you play poker?
I love poker.
So
I bought, quick side note, the first piece of jewelry that I ever bought Mandy, I won because I played poker a lot back in the day.
Wow.
So, yeah. It was illegal poker, so hopefully the statute of limitations is up. Yeah.
So, with the choices, you have choices you can make when you get a bad hand in poker.
Right.
You know, King 7, right? It's
yeah.
Notorious hand. You can choose to fold, or call, or raise, are effectively turning that dimmer all these different ways, right? And they're going to favor you or not. With exercise and nutrition and heart disease and diabetes, all those things, it's a lot more black and white. It's, hey, if you do or do not do these things, your things going up or down.
Right.
But with that hand, just because we keep saying the hand you've been dealt when it comes to genetics, the choices you make ultimately affect what's going to happen to you way more than the hand you've been dealt. Because if you get King 7, you can fold and be out and just get ready for the next hand.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to play.
Right.
But if you play and it goes poorly, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and look, none of us live a perfectly healthy life. I mean, you don't, none of us do, right? But you do have to be okay with that. And if you're not okay with the choices that you make, you either change or you don't change. But one of these phrases that I love, it sounds so cliche, nothing changes if nothing changes. Mm-hmm. It sounds so stupid, but it sounds like something Yogi Berra would have said back in the day, right? But that's it. You know, genetics absolutely play a role, and a big role that they play, and maybe this is a great take home for people, the role that genetics play is information for you. Then what you do with that information is the choices that you make on a daily basis that turn that dimmer switch up or down.
Quick side note before we finish is when I mentioned I talked to a few people about this question. Again, we talked about it from a sporting aspect, but one of the people I talked to said, what do you think about, not really just asking for my advice, but was just like, hey, I want to get my son started in gymnastics. She has a really young son. I want to get him started in gymnastics, which if you have a young kid and you want to get them in gymnastics, get them in gymnastics. Yeah. That is like the sport to get them. But only if you got millions of dollars. No, but she asked, she's like, what do you know about gymnastics and or weightlifting and stunting growth? And we know that it's a myth.
It is a myth.
It's a myth because you look at
weightlifting, just as another side note to the side note, weightlifting, especially the sport, but any kind of weight training, far safer than the sport of gymnastics.
Really?
Oh, exponentially safer.
So I said, first of all, I said it's a myth. But then we had a funny conversation as we use NFL players and NBA players, and we look at them and we say, well, playing football or playing basketball didn't make them tall. It's like, right? So, because we use the example of looking at these gymnasts. And
I've honestly never heard that, but that is the perfect answer.
Right. And so you look at these, we'll just say 5 foot even or 5'5" gymnastic men, and gymnastics didn't make them short. It was they're Olympians because they were built to do that. But on the flip side,
I can't get over how great that is. Like you don't see 6'5" gymnasts. It's not because all the tumbling shrunk them down.
Right.
It's because of the physics of the sport.
They're just the best because they were built to be the best. And I can't take credit because she said that. She said basketball players. It was Nicole. She's like basketball players didn't get tall because they played basketball. And I was like, that's...
I played a ton of basketball growing up, man. I never cracked 6 foot. I can dunk, though. I played like one season of basketball, and I'm over 6 foot, so maybe that was the secret. Maybe basketball stats grow. But, no, and so it's the exact opposite of what we were saying. It's like, so if we take those genetics again, and now, okay, we're not making those good choices, everything we just said, right? Then at that point, okay, not exercising and not having proper nutrition will leave you in a really bad spot. Unlike basketball, where, again, they're tall because they're tall. Right. Whereas you could be in a bad spot because, okay, you're in a bad spot. It's the complete other side of the spectrum when talking about sporting, and then we'll just say the physiology or the health side of genetics. Yeah. So this will probably be a topic for another day, but I think that there does need to be, and this is something that I've thought about a lot the past probably 7 to 9 months. There needs to be a much clearer distinction between sporting intention and health intention. Everything.
Everything. So that's my question is, we live right next to Fish Hawk and River Hills and Twin Lakes, and parents have kids and they get them involved in sports.
Yeah, my kids are.
Yeah, and so why are they into sports?
Well, I'm not saying that sports are bad at all. I think that there's a tremendous amount to be learned through sport, but I do think that there needs to be a lot of conversation held around, especially when you get into, this isn't a case against specialization because I think that one's already been rendered fine. Like, don't specialize in sport until you're, 18 years older or older, but there does need to be a very clear understanding that when you pursue sport, you are actively turning away from health. That's just biology.
How important is that for functional fitness athletes to hear? Functional fitness athletes, and athletes is a term that's kind of has a sporting connotation to it.
Yeah.
Those are the functional fitness clients. How important is that?
Well, hold on. So I think the proper word would be enthusiasts.
Enthusiasts.
I think it's super important. I think most are misguided.
I don't think we need to expand on that.
I think we will later, but yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm super pumped that we were able to get back into it. I've really, this has become such a normal rhythm of mine that I missed it. Like, you can ask Mandy, I was like jonesing whenever we couldn't figure out how to make it work when we were out.
Yeah.
She's like, if you need to do it, I was like, no, but I can't because the Wi-Fi connection wasn't doing anything. So I'm super pumped to be back, and I look forward to continuing these. I've got some ideas for some other things that we want to do with the podcast too. So I haven't told you about those, but maybe I will one day.
Well.
But that's it. That's it for us.
I feel like that's something I need to know.
Probably.
To everybody that tuned in and watched, thank you very much. I know we were having technical difficulties on the recording side, the audio side, and for a second there on the live stream, but I think it worked out just fine. As always, 5-star review, leave a written review.